Hello, everyone. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us today. We have a brand new story to share with you. So let's get started. My name is Victoria Lawson. The clock struck 2:47 a.m., but I was wide awake, staring at the ceiling of my luxurious penthouse. The sheets beside me were cold. Ethan wasn't home again. I should have been used to it by now, but something about tonight felt different. My stomach churned, a sinking feeling creeping into my chest like a slow-moving storm. Ethan had always been a busy man, but lately he had become a ghost in our marriage, slipping through my fingers like sand. I reached for my phone, my hands clammy as I unlocked it. My heart pounded against my ribs, an unshakable instinct telling me to check. I opened our shared cloud storage, a habit I had formed out of caution, and that's when I saw it, a folder labeled Private, recently added. My pulse quickened as I clicked it open, and within seconds, my entire world came crashing down. Photos, dozens of them. Ethan, my husband of 6 years, locked in intimate embraces with someone who was supposed to be my friend. Lauren, the woman I had trusted, the woman I had invited into our home, the woman who stood beside me at my wedding. There they were, in a luxury hotel suite, laughing, drinking, kissing. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the damning evidence, each picture more painful than the last. Lauren in the dress I had helped her pick out. Ethan wearing the watch I had gifted him on our anniversary. My vision blurred, hot tears stinging my eyes, but then, just as quickly, the sadness morphed into something else. Rage. I sucked in a sharp breath, my entire body going cold. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a calculated deception, a dagger plunged so deeply into my back I could almost feel the blood pooling. And the worst part? I had been blind to it. Ethan had played his role so well, coming home late with tired smiles, murmuring excuses about business deals, and meetings that ran over. And Lauren? She had sat across from me at dinner, listened to me vent about how distant Ethan had become, and had the audacity to nod sympathetically while secretly sharing my husband's bed. My breath came in sharp, uneven gasps as I closed my laptop. My heart no longer ached, it burned. But I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't call Ethan and demand an explanation. I was smarter than that. I had spent years building my business, turning a small AI startup into an empire. Ethan had always belittled my success, calling it a cute hobby, while basking in his own glory as a high-profile real estate investor. But what he didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I was about to finalize the sale of my company for $950 million, and they would get nothing. A slow, bitter smile spread across my lips as a plan crystallized in my mind. I wasn't going to cry, beg, or fall apart. That's what they expected me to do, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. I would let Ethan think he had won, let him file for divorce and smugly try to take half of my so-called useless assets. I would pretend to be devastated, keep up the act until the moment was right, and when that moment came, I would shatter his world so thoroughly that he would never recover. I wiped away the last of my tears, my fingers steady, as I opened a new tab on my laptop. First step, call my lawyer. Ethan and Lauren had made their move. Now, it was time for me to make mine. The morning after my devastating discovery, I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my walk-in closet, brushing out the tangles in my long dark hair. My reflection stared back at me, calm, composed, collected, unbreakable. The truth was, I felt nothing. No sadness, no grief, no heartbreak. I had burned through all of those emotions the night before. Now, all that remained was a quiet, controlled rage. Ethan had left early again, just like he had for the past few months. No doubt he was off playing house with Lauren while still sharing my bed in name only. I had always sensed that something was off, but now I had proof that would destroy him in ways he never saw coming. I walked down to the kitchen, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Ethan's abandoned coffee mug sat on the counter, a few drops of espresso clinging to the rim. For a moment, I stared at it, tempted to throw it against the wall, to let the porcelain shatter into the thousands of pieces that represented our marriage. But then I exhaled slowly, forcing down the impulse. Not yet. There was a plan to execute, and I needed to play my role perfectly. I picked up my phone and dialed the number I had saved at 3:30 a.m. last night, the only call I had made after discovering my husband's betrayal. "This is Amelia Carter," I said, my voice smooth, professional. "I'd like to schedule a meeting to finalize the asset separation before the sale." "Today?" A pause, then a crisp response. "Understood, Miss Carter. We'll see you in an hour." Perfect. By the time Ethan realized what was happening, it would be too late. An hour later, I stepped into the sleek office of Parker & Lowe, one of the top corporate law firms in the country. My attorneys were already waiting, their sharp eyes scanning my expression as I took my seat at the head of the conference table. "Miss Carter," Barbara Lowe, my lead attorney, began, pushing a thick stack of documents toward me. "As we discussed, the sale of Aegis Tech AI will be finalized within 72 hours. The funds will be deposited into your private account in the Caymans, completely inaccessible to your husband." I nodded, flipping through the paperwork. Ethan had no idea that in just a few days, I would no longer be the co-founder of a tech startup, but a multimillionaire with an empire of my own. "And the prenuptial agreement?" I asked coolly. Barbara smirked. "Ironclad. Ethan signed it without reading the fine print. He gets nothing." I leaned back in my chair, my nails tapping lightly against the polished wood surface. So, Ethan had played his game, but he had done so recklessly. He had assumed that I was weak, that I would simply accept the divorce, cry over the settlement, and walk away defeated. But what he didn't realize was that I had already left him behind the moment he betrayed me. He just didn't know it yet. Later that evening, I returned home before Ethan. I set the divorce papers on the marble counter in the kitchen, right beside his coffee mug. Then, I took a deep breath, schooling my features into the perfect mask of obliviousness. When the front door finally opened and Ethan walked in, his usual smirk in place, I didn't flinch. "Hey, babe," he said, dropping his keys on the counter, leaning in to kiss my cheek like nothing had changed, like he wasn't sneaking around behind my back. I smiled at him. Sweet, innocent, like the fool he thought I was. "Hi, darling," I purred. "How was your day?" Let the game begin. The moment Ethan walked in, I could feel it. The weight of his secrets, the quiet deceit that clung to him like an expensive cologne. He was too casual, too unbothered, and that told me one thing. He thought he had won. But he had no idea that the woman standing before him was no longer the same naive, trusting wife he had spent years manipulating. I placed a delicate hand on his chest as he shrugged off his coat. "Dinner's almost ready," I said, my voice soft, inviting. "I made your favorite, steak, medium rare." Ethan grinned. "You're too good to me, babe." If only he knew. We sat at the dining table, the candlelight flickering between us. Ethan sipped his wine, oblivious to the tension beneath my practiced smile. He chatted about his long day at work, throwing in details about a fake meeting with a non-existent client. I nodded along, pretending to believe every lie that dripped from his lips. And then, at the perfect moment, I set down my wineglass and tilted my head. "Ethan, I ran into Lauren today." His fork froze mid-air. For the first time since he walked in, his expression faltered. Just for a second, a flicker of hesitation, a crack in his armor. Lauren? His voice remained steady, but I saw it, the slight shift in his breathing, the way his grip on his fork tightened. Yes, I said smoothly, sipping my wine. She looked radiant, glowing actually. His jaw clenched. Oh? I let a slow, knowing smile creep onto my lips. I wonder if she's seeing someone. She was wearing this stunning new necklace, a gift from someone special maybe. I watched him closely, taking in the way his eyes darkened, the way his fingers twitched against the table. Checkmate. The air between us thickened, the tension so palpable I could almost taste it. He knew. He knew that I knew. I leaned forward, lowering my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. It's funny, really. I remember seeing that exact necklace online, limited edition, sold out within hours. Ethan forced a smile, but I could see the sweat beading at his temple. Babe, why are you bringing this up? I shrugged, feigning innocence. Oh, no reason. Just thought it was interesting. Expensive taste, that, Lauren. I reached for my fork and casually cut into my steak, savoring the way his discomfort simmered beneath the surface. Let him squirm. Let him wonder how much I knew. Let him fear what came next. Later that night, as Ethan slept beside me, his breathing slow and even, I reached for my phone and scrolled through the messages I had stolen from his account. I had spent the past week gathering every text, every call log, every bank transaction. He wasn't just cheating, he was planning to drain our shared accounts before filing for divorce. But what he didn't know was that by this time tomorrow, every single account under his name would be frozen. By the end of the week, the divorce papers would be public. And by the time he woke up the next morning, his entire world would be falling apart. He thought he was in control. But this was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up before Ethan. I lay there for a moment, watching him, his face so peaceful, so unaware that in a few short hours, his carefully constructed web of lies would collapse around him. I had spent years feeling powerless, feeling small under the weight of his manipulation. But not anymore. I slipped out of bed and made my way to the kitchen, my heart pounding with anticipation. Everything was in motion now. I checked my phone, 3 unread messages from my lawyer. The divorce papers had been submitted, the bank accounts had been secured, and by noon, Ethan would find out that he had nothing left. I exhaled slowly, trying to calm the storm brewing inside me. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. The sound of footsteps behind me made me stiffen. Ethan shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He yawned, oblivious, so blissfully unaware. "Morning," he murmured, reaching for the coffee pot. "Morning," I replied, watching him closely. He had no idea. Not yet. We sat across from each other at the kitchen island, sipping coffee in silence. Then, right on cue, his phone buzzed. I saw the moment it happened. The shift. The lazy, comfortable air around him shattered the second his eyes met the screen. What the hell? His voice was sharp, confusion flickering across his face. He scrolled through his phone, his fingers moving faster now. His breaths came quicker, his expression tightening as he clicked through notification after notification. Bank account frozen. Credit cards declined. Legal action pending. What the? His head snapped up, his eyes dark with panic. My bank account, it's frozen, all my cards. I set my mug down carefully, feigning curiosity. That's strange. He pushed back from the counter, his chair scraping against the tile floor. Did you? He stopped himself, his jaw tightening. Of course I did. But I just tilted my head, watching, waiting. He stormed into his office, and I followed slowly, leaning against the doorframe as he frantically typed into his laptop. I could hear his breathing, rapid and uneven, as he tried to make sense of what was happening. Then, his phone buzzed again. This time, I could see the color drain from his face. "What is this?" he whispered, his voice barely more than air. I crossed my arms, my heart hammering in my chest. "What's wrong, Ethan?" He looked up at me, his expression raw, desperate. "The divorce papers." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh? You mean the ones I filed this morning?" Silence. The words hung between us like a guillotine. And then, something snapped in his eyes. "You think you can do this?" His voice was low, dangerous now. "You think you can just destroy me?" I stepped forward, my pulse steady despite the fury radiating from him. "No, Ethan, you destroyed yourself." He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "You have no idea what you've started." I smiled then, cold, calculated, ready. "Oh, Ethan," I said, tilting my head, "you have no idea what's coming." And then, before he could say another word, I turned and walked away, leaving him to drown in the ruin of his own making. Ethan's rage was palpable, crackling in the air like static before a storm. His eyes darted around the room, searching for a way out of this mess, a way to regain control. But there was none. Not this time. "You set me up," he spat again, his voice trembling with fury. I took a slow step forward, the weight of my victory settling over me like armor. "No, Ethan," I said, my voice unwavering. "You set yourself up." He let out a sharp laugh, though there was no humor in it. "You think you're so damn smart, don't you?" His hands curled into fists at his sides, his chest rising and falling in quick, uneven breaths. "Freezing my accounts, blowing up my business deals, you really think that makes you the winner?" I tilted my head, watching him unravel. "It makes me free." His face darkened. "You don't get to do this to me." I let out a breath, shaking my head. He still didn't get it. Even now, when he had lost everything, he still believed he had some kind of power over me, that I owed him something. "No, Ethan." I met his gaze, my voice steady. "You don't get to do this to me anymore." A flash of something crossed his face then, something dangerous, something unhinged. He took a step forward, and for a brief moment, I wondered if he was going to do something reckless. I could see it in his eyes, the need to win, to take back control in any way he could. But then, his phone rang again. Ethan hesitated, his jaw clenched so tight I could almost hear his teeth grinding together. He yanked the phone out of his pocket, barely sparing me a glance before answering. "What?" he barked into the receiver. I folded my arms across my chest, watching as the color drained from his face. "Here it comes." "What do you mean they pulled the funding?" His voice was sharp, desperate. No, listen. I can fix this. Just give me." Another pause, and then, just like before, the line went dead. Ethan's breathing turned ragged. He gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles went white. For a moment he stood there, completely still, like he was trying to process what had just happened. Then, with a guttural growl, he threw the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall, pieces flying in every direction. He turned to me, his hands shaking, his face twisted in fury. "This is your fault," he seethed. I arched a brow. "You stole from your investors, lied about your numbers, and gambled everything on a deal that never existed." I let the words sink in, savoring the way his expression twisted with realization. "Tell me again how this is my fault." Ethan's breath hitched. For the first time, I saw something new in his eyes. Not just anger, not just desperation, fear. He knew he had lost. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, already knowing who it was. A single message from my lawyer flashed across the screen. Divorce finalized. I looked back up at Ethan, my heart steady, my resolve stronger than ever. "It's over," I said quietly. He shook his head, his hands raking through his disheveled hair. "Number. No, you don't get to just walk away." A bitter laugh slipped from my lips. "That's exactly what I'm doing." Ethan opened his mouth to argue, to fight, to say anything that might keep me from walking out that door. But he didn't, because he knew there was nothing left to say. I turned on my heel, grabbing my keys from the table. I didn't look back as I walked toward the door, didn't hesitate as I reached for the handle. "Ava." I froze at the sound of my name. His voice wasn't angry anymore. It wasn't sharp or demanding. It was quiet, almost broken. For a fleeting moment, I felt something stir in my chest. Pity? Regret? Remorse for what we once had? I swallowed hard, pushing it away. That man was gone. I didn't turn around. Instead, I opened the door, stepping out into the cool night air. And as I closed it behind me, I finally felt it. Freedom. As I stepped outside, the cold night air wrapped around me, sharp and unforgiving. But nothing felt as chilling as the silence behind me. The emptiness of Ethan's world collapsing in real time. My fingers tightened around my car keys as I made my way down the steps, my heartbeat steady, but my mind racing. It was over, or at least I thought it was. The second I reached my car, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I hesitated. No one had this number except my lawyer and my closest contacts. But something in my gut told me exactly who it was. With a slow inhale, I swiped to answer. "Ava," a voice said, low and controlled. "Ryan." My stomach clenched at the sound of his voice. It had been months since I'd last heard it. Months since he'd disappeared from my life, leaving nothing but carefully laid traps for Ethan to fall into. And now, he was back. "Ryan," I breathed, gripping the phone tighter. "Where are you?" He let out a quiet chuckle, but there was no humor in it. "Watching?" A shiver ran down my spine. "Watching what?" A pause. Then, "Ethan?" I turned, scanning the parking lot, the rooftops, the darkened street beyond me. Was he here? "Ryan," I said carefully, "what are you planning?" Silence. I felt the weight of the past 6 months pressing down on me, everything Ryan had orchestrated, the quiet moves, the patience, the destruction he had built so meticulously. He had dismantled Ethan, piece by piece, without ever being seen. And now, he was back. "You got what you wanted," I said, my voice measured. "Ethan is ruined. The money, the business, it's all gone. He has nothing left." Ryan exhaled slowly, and I knew he was smiling. "Not yet." A new kind of fear settled in my chest. "Ryan, you still don't get it, do you?" His voice dropped, and I could hear the edge beneath it, the storm barely contained. "This isn't about money, Ava. It never was." A lump formed in my throat. "Then what is it about?" A pause. Then he spoke, slow and deliberate. "Punishment." The word sent a cold shiver through me. This wasn't over. Not for Ryan, not for Ethan. "Ryan," I tried again, my pulse quickening. "Whatever you're planning." "Ethan stole from me," he interrupted, his voice sharp. "He betrayed me. And when he couldn't take enough, he took you." I sucked in a breath. There it was. "This was never about me, was it?" I whispered. "I was just another piece on the board." Ryan was quiet for a moment. Then, "You were the only thing I ever played for." My chest tightened, memories flashing in my mind. The late nights, the whispered confessions, the way he used to look at me like I was the only person in the world. Before I destroyed it, before I destroyed him. And yet, he still wasn't done with Ethan. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay even. "Ryan, what are you going to do?" A beat of silence. Then, in the distance, the sound of a car starting. Ryan. You should go home, Ava. My breath caught. Ryan, listen to me. Don't call me again. Click. The call ended. I stood there, frozen, my hands trembling around my phone. A pit formed in my stomach. Ryan wasn't finished. And if I knew him at all, Ethan wouldn't see it coming. I turned back toward the house, my instincts screaming at me to go back, to stop this before it was too late. But as I reached the door, Ethan was already gone. In the end, the game had never been about money, power, or revenge. It was about choices. The choices we make, the betrayals we justify, and the consequences that inevitably follow. Ryan had played the long game, dismantling Ethan piece by piece, proving that patience is the ultimate weapon. But at what cost? No one walked away unscathed. Not Ethan, not Ryan, and certainly not me. This story is more than just a tale of betrayal and vengeance. It's a lesson. Lies have consequences. Trust, once broken, is rarely ever repaired. And the past? It never stays buried. Ryan didn't seek redemption, nor did he ask for forgiveness. He simply ensured that justice was served his way. But what do you think? Was Ryan right to take matters into his own hands? Should Ethan have seen it coming? And what would you have done in my place? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to hear what happens next and see how this story unfolds, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Scylla Reddit Stories. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Because trust me, the best is yet to come. On fire.